Hello, my name is Jackie Shapin, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I am here to join everyone that is here from No CD and help answer some questions or help point out if there's a compulsion instead of answering your question. I do specialize in treating OCD as well as anxiety and eating disorders. And I've been here a few times, but it's been a while, so I'm happy to be back. And I am going to start to answer some things that I've seen come up as best as I can. And hopefully I can help some of you either understand what you're struggling with a little bit more or just kind of help you feel a little bit more validated, whatever it is that you might need. So we're going to start with Badhan Halder. I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Let's see. They said, I'm afraid if I make any religiously wrong act, I may suffer the passing away of my loved ones. If I want to search in my religious scripture whether there's a particular ritual to save them, would it be a compulsion? All right, so I don't know everyone's level of understanding of OCD. I don't know if everyone here has OCD. I'm going to assume that if you're here, you might have OCD. And so answering this question, I'm going to, there's religious scrupulosity OCD, and then there's also harm OCD, along with other themes. There's also magical thinking. And magical thinking is when you believe that thinking something might mean something bad will happen. So for instance, it says, or if you make up bad behavior, that something bad will happen that maybe isn't connected to what you were actually doing. And so I do want to point out that there might be a little bit of magical thinking here in believing that behaving in a way that is wrong, that can somehow connect to a loved one dying. That might be a little bit of magical thinking or believing. But what I do want to say about the religious aspect of it is I believe it would be a compulsion to search through your whole scripture to see if there's a ritual that would save you from whatever act you did. Because you're already basically believing this obsession and you're looking for something to make you feel better. And that is a compulsion, especially if it's repeated. However, if you are someone with a religion where it is clear that doing something is not okay, it might be okay to ask your clergy or whether it's a priest or a rabbi about something. I would say I want you to really be curious, though. If it's a compulsion, can you not ask? And can you, go back to what you've learned through your education on OCD and recovery? And if you do ask, notice what happens when you get that answer. If you feel like you need to ask again or ask for reassurance, then that is a compulsion. So if you can ask once and take in that answer and not ever ask it again, then that may not be a compulsion. Hopefully that answered. Caleb says, advice for those days when you're feeling more anxious than usual. Best advice I can give here is self-compassion and really being kind to yourself on those days where you're feeling more anxious. There is a Buddhist parable that Kimberly Quinlan talks about in her Self-Compassion Workbook for OCD. Great book by Kimberly Quinlan. And you can find this in other readings as well. But she talks about a Buddhist parable that talks about two arrows, the first and second arrow. And basically what it talks about is, let's say you get hit by an arrow in your arm. Obviously, that's going to be real pain that really hurts, that first arrow. A lot of times after something painful happens, we have thoughts or feelings or beliefs about what happened. So for instance, you might have this thought of, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I was in the way of that arrow. I can't believe that I let that arrow hit me. you know, I should have known better. So you start kind of having negative beliefs about yourself, and that adds to the pain that you're already feeling. And so it sounds like when you're feeling more anxious than usual, that sounds like a first arrow. Like you really are feeling a little bit more pain that day because you're feeling more anxious. So I want you to try to practice not having that second arrow come in and have you judge yourself or make you question yourself or, say mean things about yourself. So I want you to think about that idea of, if I already have the first arrow and I actually am experiencing discomfort or pain, I don't need to then add on to it by thinking negatively about myself. Hope that was helpful, Caleb. Let's see. MJ_D7 said, do you know things about HOCD, SOOCD? And I'm assuming that you mean harm OCD or sexual orientation OCD. I do know things about both of those. So if you have a little bit more specific of a question, unless it's reassurance seeking, I will try to do my best to answer that for you. Hi, how do you get over the thoughts of yourself or your family dying a premature death? So obviously, thinking about family or yourself dying can be just really uncomfortable and sad. And it is sad. And then on the other side of that is acknowledging that one day your family will die, one day you die. And it sucks and it's sad to think about, but that is the reality. You brought up a premature death. And I don't think that you can necessarily get over that idea that, like, if someone dies prematurely, like young, maybe before it would be ideal if they do. I don't think anyone can take away that is sad and that would be upsetting. However, the thoughts, I think you can't get rid of them. But what you can do is you can acknowledge that you have them and not try to do something about them. So acceptance of those thoughts, accepting of and validating yourself. Of course, I'd be really sad or horrified by thinking about myself or my family dying prematurely. I'm allowed to feel upset about that. However, I don't want that to take over my life. I don't want that to take me away from the present. And so if I can accept that I'm going to have these thoughts and I'm allowed to feel sad about them, and I want to live my life and be in the present moment, then doing both. So acknowledging the thoughts and turning to your values. Because if you're in the moment, if you're truly in the moment, those thoughts might take us, a back seat. Because if you're not with your family even, then those thoughts are about the past or the future. But if you're really in the present and you focus on the present, that's going to help you be more present. I'm repeating that word. And it might help those thoughts take a back seat. If the goal is to get rid of the thoughts, they won't go away. So if your goal in I'm going to focus on the present so that my thoughts go away, that's not going to help. But if your goal is, I'm going to have these thoughts and I understand I can't necessarily get rid of them, and I'm going to try to focus on what I want to do in the moment, that may help. All right, let's see. Oh, there's a lot. Sorry. How to deal with health OCD in regards to your own kids. Maddie, thank you for asking this question. So the first thing I would say, and this is for anyone that's struggling with OCD, is I would first ask if you have a provider or if you are seeing someone who specializes in OCD. If you have a child, I would highly recommend that you find them an OCD specialist. You can look, you can call an OCD. You can look on the IOCDF website. Those are two really great resources for OCD. There's also a really awesome, there's an OCD kids camp that happens once or twice a year through IOCDF, the International OCD Foundation. And it's a kids camp and parents are also included, and it's amazing. So if you just started on your journey with your kid, I really hope that you have some specialists there that can help you. And there's also a great book. I can't remember who wrote it. I think it's How to Deal with Family Who Has OCD, by one of the Jonathans. It's either Jonathan Grayson, Jonathan Abramowitz, or Jonathan Hirschfield that wrote a book on family and OCD. Let's see. Can you get medication through an OCD? NoCD is an an organization that has therapists that help you if you have OCD, they can help give you referrals to a psychiatrist who then is the one that can recommend or prescribe medication. But a therapist like myself, we cannot prescribe medication. We cannot really like give a lot of education on medication because that's out of our scope, but we can refer you to psychiatrists and we can help you kind of talk out your concerns or your excitement or whatever it might be about medication. But you can definitely ask No CD about that, but they will not be able to prescribe you medication. I'm pretty sure they don't have like a psychiatrist through them, but they will refer you to one or get you hooked up with one. Let's see. SM. When compulsively checking symptoms, then physical symptoms appear. How can you disengage when you physically feel those feelings? All right. So my response to this is if you have physical symptoms because of your compulsions, I think that what I want you to try is rather than trying to get rid of them, like I was saying before, can you feel them? Actually, even like talk them out. Like, I'm noticing that my hands and palms are sweaty, my heart's beating fast, my stomach hurts. Can you like acknowledge these physical sensations? And then can you recenter, bring yourself to the here and now and refocus on whatever it is that you would want to be focusing on if you didn't have these symptoms. I bring up being present a lot and refocusing on your values or what you're doing in the moment or here and now, those phrases. So let me explain a little bit what I mean by that. So bringing yourself to the present or being present is anything that is helping you be in the moment that you're currently in. And a lot of times when we have thoughts, they take us to the past or the present, whether it's reviewing past things or worrying about the future. And being in the present, it's really hard to get out of the present moment if you are noticing your senses in the current moment. So one really easy way of bringing yourself to the present moment is noticing your feet on the floor. This is my favorite grounding technique, and grounding techniques help bring you to the present moment. The reason why being in the present moment is so important is because that's where you're living your life. And a lot of times, or most of the time, OCD is trying to get you out of the life you're currently living, and it's trying to pull you away from experiencing joy. And so the reason why being present is so important is because that's when you're actually connecting with people, connecting with yourself, focusing on tasks or focusing on whatever you're doing in your life. And so grounding techniques is not, I don't bring them up to avoid or distract from your OCD. I bring them up as something to do after acknowledging your thoughts or acknowledging or noticing what's going on. So putting your feet on the floor is a really great way to ground yourself. There's also a skill called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which maybe a lot of you have heard of, which is where you do your senses in the current moment. So you might name 5 things that you see around you. You might touch 5 different textures so that you're getting that sensation of feel or touch. You're going to listen to 3 things you hear. You're going to smell 2 things that you can smell, and you're going to taste 2 things or taste 1 thing. Those are all going to bring you to the present moment. So that is how you can try to disengage from focusing so much or letting your physical symptoms take you away from living. Hi, Jatem. I knew but want to know if I stop my son from his compulsions or let him continue. Should I take away all soap or just let him have it? Okay, Jatem, great question. I don't know where you or your son are at your son is at in his treatment. It sounds like you're acknowledging that letting him continue might be enabling and not helping him. But then it also sounds like you might understand that if he's not ready to do exposure, that he may just throw a fit or really he'll be able to handle it, but you don't want to take something away from someone without discussing it with them and without understanding the right treatment for OCD. So what I would recommend is having your son see someone who specializes in OCD and get involved with their process in therapy. That might not mean going to their therapy sessions, but it might mean that you meet with their therapist, or you meet with their therapist and your son, and you go over the different steps that you're going to take to help him. Because it might be that you not let him use it after a certain amount of time, or it might be, you know what, right now that's a 10 on his hierarchy, and so don't take it away. Or it might be, yes, take it away. But everyone's different, and so I don't want to make the choice that may not be best for you and your son. But I do want to share that I'm really glad that you're here and that you know about No CD, because that's otherwise how would you be here, and that you're taking the steps to help your son. I think that's amazing. Let's see. Sorry, I'm really behind. I'm gonna skip around. Let's see. Let's see. Patara Gaming says, with HOCD while going through, do you feel confused, numb, and tired because it sucks and I want my life back? I think what you mean is with harm OCD, when you go through it, you feel confused, numb, and tired. One thing I will say is having OCD and struggling with OCD is exhausting and very tiring just on your brain. It is a lot. And it does suck. And I do want you to have your life back. And I have hope that you will get your life back. There are two different types of symptoms that sometimes can happen with OCD and other mental health disorders. There are a couple terms. One is called depersonalization and one is called derealization. And these are two things that can happen when you have OCD. Not everyone has these things happen, but some do. And that might be part of the confusion and the numbness. It might not. But depersonalization is when, I might be getting this confused, so I apologize if I do. But I believe depersonalization is when you feel disconnected from yourself. So some people might experience as like having limbs that are tingly, or feeling like they're not connected to their limbs, or they're not feeling grounded and present inside of themselves. And derealization is when you feel disconnected from the surroundings and the real life that's going on in front of you. And so sometimes you can feel numb or confused. If it isn't depersonalization and derealization, it also may be that you're confused and numb because these thoughts that you're having, these harm thoughts, are so distressing, and that you're also battling with, why am I thinking these thoughts? And is this really me? It can feel really confusing. And if you don't know about the right treatment for OCD, it is exposure response prevention. That's one of the best forms of treatment. And one thing that you'll learn is if you are really just stressed by your thoughts, for instance, harm thoughts, that is a really good sign that these are not thoughts that are within your values, which is also called ego dystonic, meaning your thoughts don't align with your values. And so of course that's going to cause confusion. But if you can acknowledge, okay, these are thoughts and thoughts are not facts, and you can externalize them, like, these thoughts that I have are not me, they're this other thing. You can name them, you can give them a name, you can call them OCD. Then that can help be less confusing when you can separate yourself from the OCD. And so hopefully you can, that kind of conceptual, that like visualization works for you, that like, okay, I know that I am not a harmful person and that these thoughts freak me out. Therefore, these thoughts are intrusive thoughts. They may be part of something bigger like OCD. And even though it's confusing because I hear them in my head or I'm thinking them, I also know that OCD can be something that feels like you, but it's really not you. It's this other part. Okay, there's a couple questions about tics and excoriation. There's this one that says tips for excoriating. And then I believe there was another one about tics. So skin picking, hair pulling, nail biting, all these different things can be, they're called BFRBs, which is body-focused repetitive behaviors. I am not super specialized in BFRBs. I actually have a training that I'm going to take that I have not taken yet. So I don't know too much about it. But what I will say is one of the treatments for body-focused repetitive behaviors like excoriation is, oh man, it just slipped my mind. Oh, I can't think of the name. Oh, habit reversal training, HRT. So I don't know too much about it yet, but I am going to find out more. One thing I do know is that having things that block you from your behavior can be helpful. So having body focused repetitive behaviors, BFRBs, has a separate treatment from OCD. So OCD, I would go exposure response prevention, and for BFRBs, I would go habit reversal training. Excuse me. There are other treatment modalities, but those are the two that I know are really great. And so for excoriation, one thing that you can do is you can, if you play with things in your hands, or you keep your hands occupied, or you do things that get in the way of your excoriation, that can be a first start to noticing it more. So for instance, if you have skin picking as one of your BFRBs, and you don't even really notice when you're doing it, like all of a sudden later you look in the mirror and like, oh my gosh, look what I did to my face. You can increase the awareness by putting things on your fingers. They have like covers for your fingers, so that when you do go to pick your skin, wherever it might be, you can't do it because you put these things on your skin. And then that slows you down and makes you notice, oh, wow, I was just trying to pick my skin. I couldn't do it because these things were on my hands. And hopefully that slows you down so you can even further think, what was I doing right now? Or what maybe brought up that urge to pick? And then a lot of people will have fun and get like fidget toys and fidget spinners and fidget cubes to keep their hands occupied, to try to use that instead of the skin picking. Let's see. Oh, Dylan said, yeah, you're not alone, man. I've been battling the OCD bully with SOOCD, sexual orientation OCD. Thank you, Dylan, for sharing that. I know there was someone earlier that was bringing that up. Madison Sibley says, how does someone deal with passive suicidal ideation and OCD mixed with grief? So basically, I would have more questions for you, and this is why I hope that you have a therapist to support you. You deserve that support. I would want to know, is the passive suicidal ideation and even the grief, is that part of something separate than the OCD, meaning you struggle with OCD and you have depression that maybe you've had regardless of the OCD? And or is the passive suicidal ideation linked with the OCD and with the grief? Like, are they all interconnected? That's just good background information that I think would be good to know if they're separate or not. The way that you want to deal, I don't even want to say deal, the way that you want to work with your depression is going to be different from the way that you want to work with your OCD. And it's important to be able to differentiate which one you're working with, because the treatment might be different. So for instance, with OCD, there's a lot of focus on acceptance and leaning into the discomfort and sitting with it and not challenging it. Whereas with depression, it can be helpful to use some of those tools like opposite action, or thinking about your future self and what would make your future self feel good when you're thinking about depression. So I could talk about this for a really long time, and I wish I had a short answer. I think the first answer would be, are they separate or are they linked together? And then how can you kind of go over, okay, what are the tools I'm learning about OCD? And then what are some tools for depression? And can I name what I'm working with and then decide what tools I want to use? Because you want to use, some of the tools are going to be different. I do feel for you though, that you're going through all this. Grief is very difficult. You know, people subscribe to different ideas about dealing with grief. I still am, and I'm a believer in the 5 stages of grief, Not that they go in any particular order or that they follow a route, but that there are a lot of different emotions that you're going to feel when you're going through grief, and they're all acceptable, and that there is no time frame for grief. And there's no really right or wrong way to go through grief. Obviously, there's unhealthy ways of coping. Not saying do them or that they're okay, but I think, doing things is understandable when you're going through grief. Trying to do anything to feel better is understandable. Not to say that it's okay, but I hope you can explore, healthy ways of coping. And again, bringing in back that self-compassion idea of you're already feeling pain, you're already feeling grief. And can you be kind to yourself so that you're not adding on that second arrow that I talked about earlier? All right. Oh, I love that there's so many questions. I wish I could get to all of them. If I'm not able to get to all of your questions, the place where you can find me where I'm like most accessible is on Instagram. My Instagram is my name, Jackie Shapin Therapy, is my Instagram handle. So it says, I think somewhere on the screen, my name, Jackie. Last name is S as in Sam, HAP as in Peter, IN as in Nancy, Therapy, THERAPY. That is my Instagram handle. So if I don't get to your questions, my Instagram is not therapy. But if you do ask me questions, I can start to answer them on my Instagram for you. And it'll also help me know what things to talk about on there and what types of resources to put up. So I do apologize if I don't get to all of your questions. Please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram if I don't get to them. Or you can, I think there's also a way you can ask No CD. Let's see. Brian Mary says, how would I work through obsessing about a toxic person and toxic traits they have and how to just let go? All right. So how to work through obsessing about a toxic person. So one thing I want to applaud you on is that you're noticing that you're obsessing about a toxic person and like what traits they have. So it sounds like you're already noticing, like, I'm ruminating, I'm trying to figure this person out. Just noticing that is a great way of diffusing, pausing for that moment. So that's one, is noticing it and naming it. One way to do that is by saying, I'm noticing I'm having the thought that, or I'm noticing whatever that thought is. So that's a thought diffusion skill. And a thought diffusion or cognitive diffusion is anything that separates you a little bit from your thoughts. So being able to name, I'm noticing I'm having the thoughts about this, obsessing about a toxic person. That's one step that can help. Accepting that maybe this person is toxic. Maybe they do have toxic traits. I don't know. I'm not going to be able to figure it out. What you do have control over, though, is your choice. Not to obsess or not, but what you do about this person. So I don't know if they're toxic or not. And I know that I'm obsessing about it because if it wasn't an obsession, I would have already made a decision and moved forward. But since I can't stop ruminating about it, that must be like kind of a compulsion of trying to figure it out. And so instead, I get to decide, am I going to keep talking to this person? Am I going to keep having them in my life? And if I am going to have them in my life, I may need to accept that I'm not ever going to know 100% if they're toxic or not. Obviously, there might be big red flags that I don't want you to ignore. Like if this person is actually hurting you, whether they're physically harming you or being verbally or emotionally abusive, obviously I don't want you to accept that. Because I wouldn't want that for anybody. But if you are noticing that you're thinking it over and over again, I think it's making that choice of, I'm not going to be able to figure this out. And so I'm either going to continue to have this relationship with this person, whether it's a friend or an intimate partner, or I'm going to choose to not have them in my life because they're causing, especially if they're causing you harm. Again, the goal is not to get rid of the thoughts. It's to kind of accept them and it's probably a compulsion to ask other people about it, but I just don't want you to ignore if you're actually being hurt by this person. And normally it can be obvious if you're being like actually hurt by them or not. Is it normal not to feel worthy to be happy and recover from OCD? Unfortunately, Kylie Nash, thank you for asking this question. I'm not going to say it's not normal. I think there's a lot of shame that comes with OCD, depending on your theme, depending on the thoughts. And instead of wondering if it's normal or not, what I will say is, regardless of people feeling like they're not worthy to be happy or worthy to recover from OCD, that is not true. I don't want to reassure, but I'm going to, that you're not alone in having that belief, right? Like, I'm not worthy to be happy or I'm not worthy to recover. That's like a negative belief that you have, and it could be part of your OCD. It could be part of your upbringing and these beliefs that you carry with you from like experiences or different things that you've gone through. Just because you have these beliefs doesn't mean that you have to keep believing them, and doesn't mean that they're right. Just like our thoughts aren't facts. So I know you're worthy to be happy. I know that you are worthy of recovering from OCD. Nobody, everyone is worthy of recovery, because no one deserves, or no one deserves to have OCD, and everyone deserves to be happy no matter what you've been through. If I am giving you reassurance and it's not helpful, and you know that, I'm proud of you for pointing that out, because it sounds like you might also have to sit with this idea of, you know what, maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe I'm not worthy of being happy, or maybe I'm not worthy of recovery. That doesn't mean that I can't still get support and get help and do the treatment that might work for me. So you can kind of take whatever answer is more helpful for you. Let's see. Oh, wow. I'm looking at the clock. It's a constant challenge doing basic things when my mind is constantly and analyzing how I was able to think of a certain idea and facing constant mental compulsions. Sounds exhausting. This is directing by Dana. It sounds exhausting, and I do want you to pause and give yourself, a moment of just like being comforting to yourself, like acknowledging, man, what I'm going through is so hard and so frustrating. And can you get some love? Can you get some support from someone just because you're going through so much, and just because you're having a hard time concentrating? And I apologize you're going through this. I'm trying to reread to see if there's a question there. It's a constant challenge doing basic things when my mind is constantly analyzing how I was able to think of a certain idea and facing constant mental compulsions. Who relates to directing by Dana? Because I know you're not alone. What I will say is, I guess, how can you notice right when you're analyzing? Like, are you at a point with your insight where you can notice, oh, I'm analyzing again? And every time you start to analyze, can you pause and call it out and be like, I'm doing that thing again where I'm analyzing. I'm gonna refocus. I'm, doing my homework, or I'm washing the dishes. And can you really be in the present and really focus on doing that task? It's not about pushing the thoughts away. It's about like, you know what? I'm going to have these thoughts and I'm probably going to analyze, but I'm not going to let it get away with it. Like, I'm going to call it out and be like, there I go, analyzing again. And having those thoughts with you and doing whatever you're supposed to do anyway. It is really, really, really hard though. And so I hope that you're getting support. I hope that you're using No CD's resources. Josh Miller asked, can EMDR help with OCD? So there isn't enough research on this. And so I cannot say, yes, it helps with OCD, because it's important that I come from like a place of research and evidence. we're talking about evidence-based therapies. I do EMDR, and I do know that it does help my clients, not necessarily with OCD, but in general. And so if you are someone who is going to therapy and you maybe have OCD, but you also have some other struggles going on, that is something that can help with, if you have anxiety or depression or trauma or just, experiences in your life that leave you feeling, just feeling that like, like when you think of an experience and you get a physical response from it, that's something that EMDR can help with. But I can't say that it helps with OCD. It's not proven. Let's see. Sean Burrows says, I just washed my hands at CVS and I know I turned the faucet off. I jump in my car and 10 minutes into the drive, my OCD tells me I didn't turn it off and wants me to go back and check. How do I deal? Sean, I don't know if you have a therapist right now or not. I hope you do. I hope that you're getting support with this. I'm gonna just assume you know a little bit about exposure response prevention, just this idea of exposing yourself to the fear and then not having a compulsion. So my simple answer would be keep driving, keep heading to wherever you're going, and sit with the uncertainty of not knowing. So I don't want you to reassure yourself and say, I know I washed my hands. What I want you to do is sit and be like, you know what? My OCD wants me to go back and check because I don't know if I turn the faucet off or not, but I'm gonna sit with the uncertainty. And maybe I didn't turn the faucet off, and maybe there's water everywhere, or whatever it might be that you're afraid of, and keep driving. Let me know if that falls in line with like kind of what you've been told to do. I would definitely not tell you to ever go back though. Boric, I have a 3 bath a day requirement to use my laptop because sometimes I have a sperm leak in my sleep. Sorry to say, if I don't take 3 baths a day, my brain will think my laptop has sperm. Sounds like you're aware of your obsession and your compulsion. You're talking about having to have 3 bath a day requirement. And so if you're using exposure response prevention, it would basically be you're not going to have 3 baths a day, and you're just going to have to sit with the uncertainty of what could be on my laptop. Boric also said, if I touch my personal things when my brain is thinking that my outside body is dirty, I will not use that object every day. What is that and how to cope? So it sounds like this could be an obsession about, I'm not really sure. I'd have to know more, but sometimes it could be disgust. My brain, I don't know if you have like a disgust OCD where you just feel uncomfortable with the idea that you're not clean. I don't know if dirty is more like there's a fear of getting sick. So I'm not really sure. But the way to cope with it is to sit with the discomfort that you might be dirty and still touch your personal things. Let's see. Ashti Vasaya says, can you talk about how much false memory can distort what you think you did in a real event? Thank you for asking this question. So there are many themes with OCD. I think, there's a lot of names for the different themes, which just means like the different things that we obsess about. And so one of them can be real event OCD, where you question if something happened or not. What I will say that I've learned is the more that you try to go over the facts or go over a memory, the more distorted it actually becomes, and the more you might start to form like other stories about this event. So when you don't remember, or you're having a hard time remembering, or you know that you struggle with making up things that actually happened, the more you do that, the more it will distort the real event. So that's kind of where false memory and trying to like figure it out can connect with the actual real event. Can you talk about how much false memory can distort what you think you did in a real event. So what I can say is, like, the more you try to go over an event when you know you have OCD, the more that event might get blown out of proportion, and the more false things you might start to kind of like believe happened. Sean Burrow is me. Okay. So it sounds like Ron really relates to Sean, which I love that you're sharing, because this community is amazing. And so I love when people share that they relate and connect. So it sounds like Ron also struggles with checking things and not knowing if you should go check again. How can I accept not just right feelings if I believe they give me the ability to maintain control? How can I accept not just right feelings if I believe they give me the ability to maintain control? I think it's challenging this idea of having to maintain control. I think a lot of OCD recovery is about letting go of perfectionism, letting go of control, and just seeing what happens, which is really scary, especially if you struggle with control and perfectionism. And so that's where, can you start to do little things to let go of your control a little bit? One thing that, I don't know where you are in your like treatment or anything, but one thing that can help challenge perfectionism and control, just like a little exercise, is doing things with your non-dominant hand. So if you're a righty, pick up that pencil or pen with your left hand and try journaling or try drawing something. It's going to feel really uncomfortable, and it's going to help you feel discomfort, and the more you practice that, the more you can kind of start to get used to not having things to be perfect and not having the best control. Because if any of you have tried it, hopefully you know that writing with your non-dominant hand is very tricky. And it sounds like you said you believe they give you the ability to maintain control. So it sounds like you have insight that you struggle with just right OCD, and that you believe they give you a sense of control. And so can you kind of like can you just like be open to the idea of like letting go of some of that control, and what might that be like? And can I feel scared? Can I feel uncertain? Sorry, there's my windows open and there's a dog and a neighbor. So you can probably hear that. So I apologize for that being loud. Let's see. MJ_D7. I have this habit of reading articles about signs of homosexuality. When I read those things, I start to get anxious because I'm scared that I might relate to them due to past experiences. So, sexual orientation themes. It sounds like your habit of reading articles about signs of different sexual orientations, it sounds like that habit might be a compulsion for you. For one thing, so what is bringing you that sense of urgency that you need to read these articles? However, I guess I'm wondering, are you doing it to reduce the anxiety? Because it sounds like it gives you anxiety. And then if that's true, after you read these articles, can you sit with that anxiety and not try to figure it out? I also just wanted to say that I'm not going to be correct with the correct wording of this, but it is important to note that it's important that if you are seeing a therapist, that they're thinking of exposures that are not against homosexuality. And that's why I kind of like the idea of it being sexual orientation OCD versus like homosexuality OCD, because that can kind of put those terms in a light that might sound judgmental or negative, versus this idea of basically this idea of having sexual orientation OCD is not about you not liking someone that is a different sexual orientation. But it's more just about not knowing your sexuality. And so I don't know, I think it's just important that when you do exposures with that, that it's not doing anything that is like disregarding or seeming anti other sexualities. Okay. I feel like let's see. Elizabeth says, how can we separate the feeling of what's happening in the media regarding crime and shooting in random places and to not be afraid and obsess when it's happening so much now? I feel like I'm justified to obsess over this, but it's making my life miserable. Everything you said, Elizabeth, I completely understand and relate and agree to a point. I agree that there's horrible things happening in the world. And so, of course, you're going to think about it. Of course, you're going to be afraid. Of course, you might overthink it. And so I don't want you to feel like you shouldn't obsess or it's wrong that you're obsessing. It's more about how much time is being spent focusing on this and obsessing and how much time is being spent living my life according to how I want to live it. So it doesn't mean ignore what's happening, not stay knowledgeable about what's happening. But if you notice that it's causing a lot of distress, it's kind of about creating boundaries. So like, how much of the media am I taking in? How many sources am I reading about? And limiting that, is there one source that you really trust and that you like, and that's what you watch and that's it? How much are you talking about it? Does it maybe help to limit how much you're talking? I'm not saying don't talk about it, but I'm saying if you're noticing that you're going to all these different people and bring this topic up, is that working for you? Is that helping you? Or is that actually bringing on like more pain for you? So I think it's about finding that balance. And also, again, that self-compassion of like, you are right. It is justified that you are afraid and that you are nervous and that you might obsess about this. Just because something's justified doesn't mean that you want to keep doing it though, right? Like just because it's okay and understandable doesn't mean that you probably want to be spending most of your time obsessing about it. So it's not about like putting yourself down for it or thinking you're not supposed to. It's about balancing you kind of taking back that control from your OCD if you do have OCD. Let's see. AW0808, I always want to wash my hands after feeling splatter and biting sensations that my doc said is anxiety. I have rabies OCD and always afraid it's a bat and I want to wash hands or shower. So again, the first thing I'll say to everybody here is if you do have OCD, I hope you're getting support. And that could be from No CD. That could be from if you don't have insurance or can't afford something like No CD or seeing a therapist. Kimberly Quinlan has something that's called ERP School or cbtschool.com, where she would obviously recommend that you have a professional help you. But as far as financially not being able to afford it, she does have ERP School that you can kind of take yourself through. Anyway, all that to say that for everybody, you all deserve help, and I hope that you're getting support. So for always wanting to wash your hands after feeling splatter and biting sensations, when your doctor said it's anxiety, that you have rabies OCD, so it sounds like the right thing would be like feeling that splatter, feeling the biting sensation, and just moving forward with your day. Not just because it's not easy, but basically noticing, I feel this splatter and I feel the biting sensation. And I know that like this happens because of my anxiety. And so I'm going to just like not wash my hands and I'm not going to shower and I'm just going to kind of sit with it. Sitting with it doesn't mean that you should just like freeze and not do anything. It means move forward. What else are you doing in your day? What do you want your life to look like? And do that. All right. I can answer a couple more. If I don't answer all your questions again, please check back with an OCD. I know they do these lives often. You can also find me on Instagram at Jackie Shapin Therapy, and ask me some questions, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Let's see. Raphael says, "Good night, everyone. I'm dating. I have ROCD. We gave time in a relationship and I feel less distress, a lot less. But I know I'm very down. How to explain my suffering? I feel I should write it." Okay, so you're dating, you have ROCD. I'm not exactly sure of your question. However, I don't want you to overly read or people to overly get information, but there is a book by, it starts with SH. I want to say it's Shira or Shiva on relationship OCD. I do feel for you because ROCD can be really difficult. And I don't want to give you the wrong answer on like explaining your suffering, because depending on what you're working on in your treatment, if you are doing treatment, it may not be helpful to have to actually explain your suffering. I think journaling sounds like a great idea if it's not a compulsion, which means maybe you can free journal and just see what happens. If it leads to overthinking or compulsing or like having, figuring things out, then I think the journaling isn't helpful. But if you're feeling really down, journaling can be a great tool when you're feeling down. The other thing, if you're feeling down, and I'm separating this from OCD treatment, is separate from OCD treatment. If you're feeling down and you're feeling depressed or just sad, do something that makes you feel happy. Think about your future self. If I stayed in bed all day today, is my future self going to feel a little bit better? Or if I make myself get up and take a walk, will my future self maybe feel better after that? So that's like a question that you can ask yourself is like, how would my future self feel when you're talking about feeling down? Ron said, "I'm trying to tell myself I'm not bad if I don't do checking compulsions. Trying to reframe it as, no, I'm good if I don't do the compulsions. That will make me better." So I love that you're really trying. The reason why this might be problematic is because that response can then be a compulsion. And it's not helpful to respond by necessarily doing positive affirmations or because it can be a compulsion, right? To be like, no, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. No, I'm good if I don't do this. So instead, I want you to try to reframe it as, I'm not going to decide if I'm good or bad. I'm going to make this choice to not check, and I'm going to have to sit with the unknown. Okay. Let's see. Raphael, thanks. I know my question was confusing. It wasn't confusing, Raphael. I wasn't sure which part to respond to. I'm uncomfortable as a sexual being and feel like anything sexual in thought or body response is wrong. How do I deal with this? I always checking my mind and body. Roxana Ruiz, thank you for sharing this. One, I want to just say I think it's great that you're being open and vulnerable and sharing this. This could be part of an OCD, but this can also be part of some other things that are, just other things. So I think it might be helpful to see a therapist who does know about OCD, but that also maybe knows, is a therapist for other things, because this again could be OCD related, but this also could be not. There's so many factors when it comes to having shame about different things. And I would really want to know more about you and hear more about you to be able to help. So I wish I could give you an answer of how to deal with it other than finding a therapist that knows about OCD so they can tell if it is, but that also is open to exploring what else it might be about, because, there's our environment, there's our nature, there's nurture, there's our culture, there's like so many other factors that can go into why we may be uncomfortable with our sexuality. And so I don't want to give you an answer because it might not be the right answer for you. But I do hope that you're able to like talk that out with someone. So with Ron's question, would it be okay to say I'm accepting uncertainty and imperfection? Yes. So anything that you're saying, would it be okay? You just have to be aware that it could become a compulsion. So if you're constantly starting to say, I'm accepting uncertainty, I'm accepting imperfection, if that is something that you like start to feel like you have to say or something that you always say, you want to be careful because again, that can become a compulsion. Um, it's the same with being like, I know I have OCD. Thoughts aren't facts. Thoughts aren't facts. So psychoeducation is really important to have in the background of your mind, but it's not great to like repeat because that can become a compulsion. So it is okay to say like, I'm accepting uncertainty, but if it feels like you have to say that or like you start to always use that same phrase, that's when I want you to like switch things up. Okay, we are at time. Love all the questions. I wish I could answer all of them. I hope I was able to get to enough. If I didn't get to it, please come to another No CD talk. Again, you can find me on my Instagram. What I love to do is share a couple books that I recommend. I love to give resources. So the one I've been holding is the Self-Compassion Workbook for OCD by Kimberly Quinlan. Another great book is the Mindfulness Workbook for OCD by John Hirschfield and Tom Corboy. I might be saying that one wrong. Another good book. Oh no, where did it go? There's another good book I like, but I thought I had it with me and I don't. It's called Overcoming. It's blue and it's called Overcoming Unwanted Thoughts or something like that, but I don't have it with me. I thought I had it, but this isn't it. So these are two good ones though that I really like. There's also a lot of other great resources out there. That is it. I hope that was helpful. I always love doing this and seeing the community. I'm so glad you're able to find this as a resource. The OCD community is amazing. If you are ever able to go to the OCD conference, it's once a year, and next year it's going to be in San Francisco. I encourage you to go if you're able to. I know not everyone can. It was in Denver this year, and it was incredible to meet so many people, and maybe some of you were there. Also in November, IOCDF is having their virtual conference. So you can do it from your own home, and that's coming up in November. So those are some more resources for you. So again, my name is Jackie Shapin. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in California. So again, if anyone is needing support, reach out to an OCD. You can find me on Instagram at Jackie Shapin Therapy. You can look at the IOCDF page, and hopefully I'll be here again. And have an amazing rest of your week, everybody. Bye.